Descent into madness, everyone. Well, I was going to talk about one thing today, and then I saw a news story and decided I needed to talk about it as well. Yeah, I know they don't mesh up at all. And actually, I probably should just break it into two videos. Um, but yeah, I'll break it into two videos. Okay, so I'm going to stop this. I couldn't ask for another. Dun 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 dun. I couldn't ask for another. Dun 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 dun. I could for another. Welcome, one and all, to this September 24th edition of Descents into Madness. Today we're going to be looking at a recent news story on MSN about a woman and a man who decided to freeze some embryos. And then they decided to break up. Now, you would think logic would say, guess what? We're going to have these destroyed or donated to science, or we're going to play beer pong with them. None of the above has happened, however. Instead, they are in court, where a judge and a man who may or may not be naked under his robes will decide the fate of these embryos. Now, first, I think we should get this out of the way. I am neither for or against abortion, mainly because in the US, where I am at, it does not matter if you are male. Myself being male, I really have no voice in the matter. If a woman decides to keep a child, it's her decision. Man never has to be consented. If a man decides to get, or a woman decides to get an abortion, again, her decision. Man never has to be consented. If a man decides he does not want the child, and the woman decides to keep it, he can go fuck himself, but she'll be more than glad to take that child support until the child is 18. Yeah. So we can just go on with my problems here. And you can make the argument, it takes two people to make a baby. Well, if that's the case, then both people should have an equal voice in what happens to that child. Be it getting an abortion, or keeping the child, or putting the child up for an adoption. And if those two voices cannot come to a consensus, someone should step in who has an outside perspective and act as a mediator to where both parties will be satisfied. Again, none of this happens, so I do not give a crap about the abortion debate in the US. And I'm sorry if this is echoing. It may be. This is kind of my first time doing this, so bear with me. Deciding to do this instead of to type it up since nobody listens to me typing shit up. So, back to the discussion at hand. Seems we have a man and a woman who were dating. One's I believe, a psychologist, and one is a nurse. And no, it is not the woman who's the nurse, it is the man. So the woman's a psychologist, well educated, well paid, all of the above. Man, somewhat well educated, definitely well paid. Again, both of these I could argue are overpaid, but whatever. Not the debate for now. So they're debating. They're dating, and the woman finds out she has cancer. And, well, of course, cancer involves chemotherapy, and chemotherapy leaves women infertile. This is not a good or bad thing. It's just the necessary thing that happens. Now, instead of simply getting her eggs frozen, she and her boyfriend at the time decided to use his sperm to fertilize the eggs and create embryos that could later be implanted into her and she could have children. Now, my personal opinion on this guy. Dude, you're a nurse. You should know better. You may have loved her at the time. You may have, well, you might have been having mind-blowing sex at the time, but you should have fucking known better. And as far as she goes, hey, I'm not saying all women are manipulative bitches. Just most women are manipulative bitches. And her being a psychologist, she was definitely manipulating him. But I'm not a judge, and I'm not hearing the case. I'm just here to present facts and throw my personal opinion in here and there just to spice things up a bit. So, they go have these embryos frozen. During the cancer treatment, the stress and strain of everything, their relationship fell apart. It happens. So, as these embryos are still in storage, well, the woman decides, I'm done with cancer, I'm cancer-free, whatever. I want to have a kid. Well, I got these embryos in storage. And because I decided to have embryos frozen and not eggs frozen, I'm going to have them implanted. Well, the guy decides, I don't want to have kids. Now, from the article, it says at first, he was okay with the idea of basically, I'm going to give up my parental rights and you can have these kids. Now, my guess is, this is just a guess, that either she said something to imply that that really wasn't going to work, or due to recent rulings in courts in the U.S. Towards sperm donation, basically the sperm donators are still counted as the father, and therefore if a state government decides they want to go after someone for child support for these children that are given birth to by sperm donation, they can go after the sperm donator, regardless of whether it was supposed to be anonymous or whatever. So he decided, I don't want children. Personally, that is his right. You are no longer in, well, even if he was in a relationship, that is his right. Now, if he was in a relationship, he would probably be stupid and still be having sex, and then all kinds of funkiness can go on. But anyways. Now, it should have been right there. Should have just, boom. He said, I don't want to have children, made his case, and the woman should have said, I respect your choice, I can go adopt. I respect your choice, whatever. It didn't. And what we have now is them going to court, and a judge will decide whether she can have the eggs implanted or not. Now, a lot of you people are probably going to say, let her have the eggs implanted. Now, to those of you who are going to say this, I just have to say, you haven't thought of the ramifications of this. And for those of you who are going to say, no, don't let him have these eggs implanted, again, you haven't thought of the ramifications for this. And that is what I'm here to present. Now, the man is claiming that even though he gave his consent at the time, he was under duress. Now, the legal definition of duress in the U.S. is the use of force, false imprisonment, or threats, or possibly psychological torture and or brainwashing to compel someone to act in a contradictory to his or her wishes or interests. Now, interests is the key word there. If it's used to sign an agreement, it's null and void. Okay, now, here's the problem with not letting the woman implant the eggs. if a man can use the duress argument to say, I was under duress at the time for this case, there will, you can rule, and I will say this, a judge could rule that, in this case it implies, but he walked into a building. There was no woman sitting on his lap, giving him a lap dance. He was not sexually aroused, I don't imagine, or anything like that. He walked into a building, filled out numerous forms, and proceeded to jerk off into a little cup. Yes, he was under so much duress. I feel sorry for him. Now, on the other hand, studies have shown, numerous studies by well-respected scientists have shown that the hormone levels in the male brain during times of arousal or when women are releasing certain hormones adversely affect the male brain and decision-making faculties. Now, therefore, most men, I'm going to say most, because there are men out there that like kids, and actually I imagine a lot of men like kids, but they want to have more control over it than they do. Therefore, it is not in most men's interest to have unprotected sex or whatever else. Now, due to hormones and pheromones and a lot of chemicals that are released in the brain, either during the time that women are most fertile or during arousal or a combination of the two, or when alcohol is involved, and this is important here, if a woman can be given alcohol till she's plied to a point where her decision is impaired, and therefore any decision she makes at the time is considered not her best judgment, and this is when rapes happen due to alcohol, then a man should be equally plied if during sex a woman he has sex with and she gets pregnant, and it's like, well, technically I couldn't have consented to sex at the time, so this child is not legally mine. The court would never rule that, but that's just the general sexism here. But therefore, it's not in his best interest. But there are outside forces compelling him to do something and not in his best interest. Now, can he control them? Yes. But then again, if someone has a gun to your head and says, sign this or I'll shoot you, or sign this and I'll shoot your wife or kids or whatever, can you control your actions then? Yes. But they're compelling you to do something different. So, if the court rules that, yes, this is duress, then no man, basically it could be taken to court then that I was aroused, she was, the chemicals in my brain, arousal, she was producing these pheromones. Guess what? I was under duress when I had sex with her. That child I should not be legally responsible for. It's a valid argument. And you might say, well, it takes two people to make a baby, but that argument would work. If you're going to hold women to that standard when they're drinking and put themselves in that situation, you have to give it to men. On the other hand, when there's scientific evidence here that this is what happens, and they didn't go to a bar necessarily, they're just walking to the mall or whatever. Or even if they are making out with someone, a woman put herself in a situation, went to a party, went to a bar, ingested more alcohol than is responsible, and therefore, boom. So, to rule that way, basically will say that no man ever has to accept responsibility for his children. I don't think all men will do that, but that is a precedent it could set. Now, to rule the other way, however, has the same level of detrimental effect on male rights. The other way basically says, if you ever, even knowing that now if you donate sperm, you could be held accountable and forced to pay child support. Or if you're with someone and, again, you decide to freeze sperm or you decide to freeze embryos or whatever, and then you break up with them, that is going to go to that woman and they can force you to be in their lives. And again, there are also studies that show that women, and this has been documented not just through studies but also through criminal investigations, that there has been times when women have stole men's sperm, basically by jacking them off, froze it or kept it cold enough to where it doesn't die within like 24 hours, and then had themselves, fertilized with it. And basically the court would be saying, well, in any of these cases, it is her body, the eggs are hers, she has control and she can lock you into this, she can trap you. You have no say. So you're better off being sterilized. Now, being sterilized in the case of men is a perfectly viable option. Science can now take stem cells from your skin and transform them into basically sperm cells and use them to create, well, they can turn them into an egg too for men and use them to fertilize an egg and therefore produce a life. Now again, this is another problem. In the future, what if a woman harvests the skin cells from a man and has this done when the price is dropped? Or even a psychologist, I imagine, would make enough to be able to afford this procedure even now. And they could just say, oh, it's your genetic material, you consented. No. No. Men need reproductive rights as much as women do. I understand it's a woman's body and she shouldn't be forced to get an abortion. A man shouldn't be able to go and force you to get an abortion. But a man should have a say. If you don't want to get an abortion, that's fine. Because some of you are religious nut jobs or for whatever reason and think da-da-da is murder. But then again, you think God is almighty and omnipotent. And okay, we're not going to get into that. But a man needs the rights to say, look, no. When a man needs protection just as much as a woman does. If a woman goes out and gets a man drunk and has sex with him, then, and she gets pregnant, he's still held responsible. But if a woman goes out and gets raped, and I'm not saying some stranger jumps her in an alley and shoves a dick in her and whatever. I'm meaning she goes out to a bar and gets drunk and da-da-da, or she ingests drugs under her own volition, even though knowing these things are going to impair her judgment, and gets pregnant, or any number of any scenarios where she put herself in that situation, and yeah, she's not held responsible at all. A drunk driver's held responsible. He put himself behind the wheel, so he's charged with drunk driving, and those penalties are severe. Someone who goes out and buys drugs, if they're caught with those drugs, those penalties are severe. They put themselves in that situation. Someone who steals. But a woman who puts herself in a situation like that isn't held to any standards. And so it's just, a man needs reproductive rights too. Now, I'm not telling you how to think, because why would I? I'm just bringing these topics up, and you can think about them and let them tumble around in your head, and hopefully the hamster isn't dead. I know, for some of you out there, that wheel's just spinning, the hamster's just going up and falling back down and falling back down. You forgot to feed him, forgot to give him water, whatever. There's nothing going on in there. But, yeah. So I think that's going to be it for now. And I'm going to have another one of these probably up tonight. And then hopefully we'll be doing this pretty often. But thank you and have a good night, everyone.